stars burned red above New Kyoto, the last human colony on the edge of the Zeroth Dominion's reach. Through the cathedral-like bridge of the flagship Eclipsora, the world's dying light reflected across alien gold and obsidian armor. High Admiral Varkan sat motionless upon his throne, a living monument to arrogance. Below him, the planet cracked open under the Dominion's plasma bombardment, oceans turning to vapor and mountains to glass. "Another world purified," said First Warden Sithra, her voice smooth and cold. "Their resistance was statistically insignificant." Varkan barely glanced at her. "Insignificant implies existence, Warden. These creatures were an inconvenience of carbon." He waved a clawed hand. "Purge the atmosphere. I dislike smoke lingering." As the command rippled through the fleet, hundreds of orbital lances ignited, erasing the last traces of humanity on the surface. The High Admiral leaned forward, studying the fading blue sphere as one might admire the end of a painting. His expression carried no malice, only the indifference of a being who had forgotten what challenge felt like. The bridge vibrated with quiet awe. Officers knelt as he rose. "We cleanse the galaxy of its parasites," he declared. "We are not conquerors. We are the natural order made manifest." Murmurs of devotion filled the chamber. They called themselves gods not as metaphor but as fact. For centuries, no civilization had stood against them. Only one figure among them hesitated, a younger tactician, barely grown from the brood pits. His voice trembled. "High Admiral, some reports from the Outer Rim colonies mention anomalies in human patterns. Disappearing fleets. Fabricated distress signals. I believe." Varkan's laughter cut through the air like a blade. "Believe? You are not bred to believe, tactician. You are bred to obey." He turned his gaze to the star map hovering above the bridge. "The humans scatter and squeal. Is what vermin do before extermination." At that moment, a transmission chimed from the Dominion's Imperial core. The Emperor's symbol burned crimson in the air. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the bridge. "To High Admiral Varkan, destroyer of worlds, purifier of stars. The time of theater has arrived. Strike the cradle of these creatures. Strike, Earth." The bridge erupted in exultation. A pilgrimage of annihilation. The chance to erase humanity at its source. Sithra bowed. "The Emperor honors us." "Indeed," Varkan murmured, his slitted eyes gleaming. "Let the mortals watch as their home is unmade. Let them see divinity descend." He turned toward the vast window. "Plot a direct course to Sol. Inform the Armada we march not for conquest, but coronation." Far away, in the silent, dark near-Earth's moon, Captain Elias Ward watched the flicker of sensor ghosts tracing alien movement across the outer system. The command deck of Horizon Station was dim, lit only by the pale shimmer of holographic projections. "Another colony gone," his second-in-command whispered. "New Kyoto is ash." Ward didn't answer immediately. His face was worn, his tone even. "They're closing the circle. Exactly as predicted." The officer turned toward him, voice cracking. "Predicted? We can't fight them, sir. They burn worlds for sport. Their ships." "Bleed like anything else," Ward interrupted quietly. His gaze never left the screen. "You think we've been idle? That Earth has been praying for mercy." He leaned closer, keying commands that brought up old blueprints, black projects buried beneath decades of silence. The words Project Janus flickered briefly, then vanished into classified encryption. The younger officer swallowed. "We've never tested it. If we provoke them." Ward allowed himself a thin, dry smile. "They already think themselves gods. They'll come expecting worship. We'll give them revelation instead." He straightened, the reflection of Earth gleaming faintly in his eyes. "Signal Command, we initiate the Ares Protocol." The Eclipsora and its escort fleet breached the edge of the Sol system days later, light from Jupiter painting their hulls like bronze fire. The aliens expected panic, human signals screaming across every frequency, defenses rising in futility. Instead, the channels were silent. Sithra frowned. "No transmission. No military response. Even their satellites are dormant." Varkan's lips curved in amusement. "They hide behind silence now. How quaint." He ordered an open broadcast, his voice booming across the void on all human frequencies. "To the lesser beings of Earth, kneel. Your extinction is a mercy. Your persistence blasphemy." The message cut mid-sentence. Static. Then nothing. Interference. Sithra asked sharply. "Impossible. the communications officer replied. Our encryption. A low hum filled the bridge. One of the sensor operators froze. Admiral, gravitational anomaly dead ahead. The void rippled. From the distortion emerged a single vessel, enormous, angular, plated in black titanium alloy. Its presence seemed to absorb starlight itself. Varkan's voice faltered for the first time. What is that? The ship's name appeared on his display, human letters glowing white. HSS Leviathan, Vengeance-class dreadnought. He sneered to mask unease. A relic. Send a squadron to dismantle it. The bridge watched as dozens of alien cruisers moved in. Their plasma lances struck the Leviathan's hull and rebounded, slicing their own ships apart. Gasps filled the chamber. Varkan rose slowly, disbelief creeping into his tone. What trickery is this? A new transmission cut through their command frequency, sharp and calm. This is Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Defense Command. Zeroth vessels, you have entered restricted space. Withdraw immediately or face disassembly. No emotion, no shouting, just certainty. Sith returned to her commander, voice barely above a whisper. He sounds certain of victory. Varkan's jaw tightened. Then let him taste divine wrath. The alien fleet's weapons charged again, space itself trembling with the buildup of power. But as the first volley prepared to launch, the human dreadnought moved, not with speed, but with purpose. Energy rippled across its surface like the pulse of a living star. Admiral, the sensor officer whispered. They're locking on every ship simultaneously, impossible targeting vectors. Varkan snarled. Fire. The command never left his throat. A blinding surge erupted from a Leviathan, not light, not plasma, something else entirely. For a heartbeat the void screamed. When vision returned, half the Zeroth fleet was gone. Not destroyed, erased, as if they had never been. Silence hung in the command bridge. Even the automated hymns of the Dominion ceased. Varkan stood frozen, his reflection caught in the glass of his throne's viewport. The illusion of divinity cracked, faint but real. Admiral, Sithra whispered, trembling. Orders. He turned slowly toward the dying light where his ships had been. Transmit this to all units. Humanity is not what we believed. His gaze fixed on the Leviathan as its engines flared again. Prepare the fleet, he murmured. The gods will answer their challenge. And for the first time in countless years, High Admiral Varkan felt something divine slip through his grasp, doubt. The first exchange of fire was brief, but it shattered centuries of certainty. The Eclipsera's decks trembled under the echo of its own reflected energy. What should have been a cleansing strike had become a mirror of destruction, a divine hand burning its own fingers. Varkan stood amid the chaos, staring into the screens that now showed his fleet scattered and crippled. The dreadnought hung before them like a silent monolith, patient and impenetrable. It did not advance. It merely watched. Status. Varkan's voice was level, but the undercurrent of strain was unmistakable. Shields holding at 60%, Sithra answered, her mandibles tight. Half our escorts are gone. They were consumed. Consumed. Varkan repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. You mean destroyed? No, Admiral, she said quietly. There was nothing left to destroy. He turned back to the main viewport. The Leviathan drifted closer, massive enough to blot out the stars. A communication request flickered again, human origin, encrypted, elegant in its simplicity. Varkan accepted it with a flick of his claw, more out of curiosity than diplomacy. Captain Elias Ward appeared as a grainy image, a man of unremarkable features but eyes that betrayed calculation. He spoke in that same steady tone, neither mocking nor afraid. Zeroth Command, you have violated Terran territory. This is your final warning. Varkan's laughter returned, though thinner now. You think one vessel can threaten the Dominion? Ward's expression didn't change. One was all we needed. The feed cut abruptly, leaving only static. The silence that followed was worse than the laughter. Varkan felt something he hadn't felt since the first wars of his youth, anticipation mixed with the faintest tremor of uncertainty. He masked it quickly. They hide behind theatrics. Prepare the second salvo. I want that ship dismantled molecule by molecule. The fleet obeyed. Weapons hummed, plasma veins pulsing like arteries before release. But when the order came to fire, nothing happened. The consoles flickered. One by one, Dominion systems went dark. Sithra's voice rose sharp. Admiral, our targeting matrices are compromised. They're inside our network. Impossible. No species has broken our encryption since the founding. And yet, before his eyes, the Dominion's own targeting arrays recalibrated on themselves. The ships began firing blind, tearing through their own formation. Varkan shouted over the alarms, "Shut it down. Manually sever command relays." But the damage was done. The Leviathan didn't fire again, it didn't have to. The Dominion was collapsing from within, undone by its own arrogance. Across the bridge, the tactician who had once questioned their assumptions stared in horror. "They anticipated us, Admiral. Every maneuver. Every response." Varkan froze. "Explain." "They've studied us. Our patterns, our hierarchy, our faith in superiority. They wanted us to come here." The words carried weight like gravity. For the first time, the idea that humanity might have engineered this encounter seeped through the Admiral's iron composure. He turned toward the void. "Show me their history." Within moments, the ship's intelligence conjured human archives across the air, centuries of wars, empires, revolutions. Each image more violent than the last, nuclear firestorms consuming continents, soldiers trudging through ash, skies filled with machines of death. Sithra whispered, "They destroy each other endlessly." Varkan's claws dug into his throne. "No, they endure. Every cycle, they find new ways to kill and survive. Pain isn't their weakness, it's their inheritance." He watched as ancient images of ruined cities transitioned to rebuilt skylines, to machines that reached stars, to fleets that vanished into the dark. The humans had learned to use tragedy as blueprint. A soft voice came from behind him. "Hi, Admiral. What if this is their ascension?" He turned sharply. Blasphemy. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure which gods he was defending anymore. The fleet's sensors pulsed again. Human reinforcements were arriving, not massive armadas, but precise insertions from multiple vectors, wormhole echoes flickering like ghosts. Varkan's analysts scrambled to project trajectories, but the data refused to align. Each jump's signature appeared, and disappeared before they could be plotted. "Admiral," Sithra said softly, "they're surrounding us with absence." He realized what she meant. The humans weren't appearing. They were not appearing where expected. A strategy built not on dominance, but deception. Every move a shadow of something else. Ward's voice returned, calm and clinical. "This was never a battle. You stumbled into a test. You failed." Varkan's rage ignited but burned hollow. "You think you've unmade gods, human?" "No," Ward replied, almost pitying. "We stopped believing in them." Then the Leviathan fired again, not a beam, not an explosion, but a silent pulse that rippled through the Dominion ships. Lights dimmed, engines faltered. Every ship except the Eclipsera went cold, adrift and powerless. "Admiral," came a weak voice from comms. "Our fleet gone. No explosions. Just gone." Varkan stared into the vastness, his mind racing through centuries of victory now rendered meaningless. The Dominion's theology, its hierarchy, its myth of invincibility, all undone by the species they had mocked as primitive. Sithra stepped closer, her voice trembling. "If they can erase us so effortlessly, why haven't they finished it?" Varkan didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on the Leviathan. It waited, silent, like a judge rather than an executioner. "Because they want us to understand," he said finally. "They want us to see what comes after fear." He turned to his command crew. "Withdraw. Regroup beyond the asteroid belt. I will not meet annihilation in ignorance." As the Eclipsera began to retreat, Varkan felt the unfamiliar weight of mortality pressing against his mind. It was not terror, it was awakening. Behind him, the tactician dared to speak again. "Admiral, the Emperor will demand explanation. He'll call this heresy." Varkan's voice dropped, colder than vacuum. "Then let him. Gods who fear truth are no gods at all." The human dreadnought made no pursuit. It simply turned, as if satisfied, and drifted back toward the heart of Sol. Varkan watched its slow disappearance, unable to look away. He thought of the archives again, the endless cycles of war, the resilience born from suffering. For the first time, he envied the humans' imperfection. It gave them something the divine could never possess, hunger. When he finally spoke, it was not to his crew, but to himself. "Perhaps we mistook survival for supremacy." Sithra glanced at him, uncertain. "Admiral." Varkan's expression was unreadable. "Send word to the core worlds. Tell them humanity is not prey. Tell them they've met their reflection." The ship slipped into warp, carrying with it the first whispers of panic that would soon devour an empire built on certainty. And in the silence between stars, the gods began to question their own creation. The Dominion fleets regrouped in the shadows of a dying nebula, their remaining ships huddled like wounded beasts. Systems flickered weakly, hulls scarred and blackened. The once splendid formations that had stretched across constellations now trembled in disarray. On the Eclipsera's bridge, silence pressed on every soul. Even the automated hymns of the gods had been muted. High Admiral Varkan stood at the viewport, watching his reflection drift across the glass. The certainty that had once defined him was gone. He had seen his fleet erased without fanfare, his empire's supremacy shattered by a single human vessel that barely seemed to acknowledge its victory. The word God felt hollow now, an echo of a lie he'd repeated so long he'd forgotten what truth sounded like. Sithra approached cautiously, her voice low. "Admiral, the Imperial Council demands a full report. They await your explanation for the loss of 6 fleets." "Tell them the truth," Varkan said, not turning. She hesitated. "That we were defeated by primitives." His eyes narrowed. "No, tell them we were defeated by predators." She recoiled, unsure if it was metaphor or madness. But Varkan wasn't finished. "I studied their history," he continued. "Their wars lasted centuries, their peace mere pauses between them. They never stopped learning how to kill, even when they forgot why. We thought them fragile because they broke easily. We never realized they mend stronger each time." Sithra's composure cracked. "Then what are they now?" Varkan's voice was quiet. "Evolution, Sithra, given patience and purpose." Before she could answer, alarms blared through the ship. The command deck flared crimson as tactical overlays ignited across the screens. The humans had found them again. Reports came in rapid succession, wormhole signatures opening across multiple vectors surrounding the Dominion remnants. No single source. No consistent formation. The humans weren't advancing, they were appearing. A network of impossible precision. Varkan straightened. "So soon," he murmured. "They're not chasing us. They're hurting us." The bridge shook as a shockwave rippled through the nebula, distorting every sensor. A moment later, the stars vanished. The entire sector fell under a shimmering veil of interference, human jamming fields of planetary scale. Sithra whispered, "We can't see them." "Then look harder," Varkan snapped, though the command rang hollow. He knew what was coming. On the other side of that invisible barrier, Captain Elias Ward stood aboard the Leviathan, surrounded by quiet efficiency. The human command deck was calm, almost tranquil. There was no celebration, no rage. Only duty. "Contact established," his officer reported. "Dominion fleets encircled. They're attempting countermeasures." Ward gave a slight nod. "Maintain distance. Engage on my mark." He watched the tactical display without emotion. He could see their confusion, their desperation to find an enemy that refused to stand still. For Ward, it wasn't satisfaction, it was confirmation. "Sir," another officer said, hesitant, "we could end it now. Full strike would erase their command structure completely." Ward's tone was quiet. "We don't erase civilizations. We educate them." The officer didn't reply, but his hands trembled on the console. Humanity's restraint had become something terrible, a calmness that frightened even themselves. Ward turned toward the window, where faint glimmers of alien light flickered like dying stars. "Transmit final terms," he said. The Dominion fleet received the message seconds later. It was not a demand for surrender nor a taunt. Just coordinates, Earth's coordinates, and 3 words, "We are awake." Varkan read it aloud. The words felt heavier than any weapon. He could sense meaning beneath them, something older than warfare. "They're calling us home," Sithra murmured. "No," Varkan said. "They're calling us to witness." The humans moved first. From the darkness emerged dozens, no hundreds, of warships, each smaller than the Leviathan, but moving in perfect synchrony. Their formation wasn't military, it was mathematical. Every ship's trajectory complemented another, weaving through space like an intricate pattern of inevitability. Varkan felt it before he saw it, the pressure, the invisible tide of gravitational warping. The Dominion's own engines faltered. One by one, their vessels were dragged into precise kill zones where kinetic slugs, moving at fractions of light speed, struck without warning. There were no explosions, no flashes of victory. Only silence as ship after ship went dark. Sithra gripped the railing, her voice breaking. "They don't even gloat." Why would they? Varkan said. Predators don't boast of prey. He watched in grim awe as the human fleet adjusted its configuration mid-battle, adapting faster than his strategists could calculate. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was reactive, alive in a way Dominion constructs could never be. Every human vessel moved like part of a single thought. Sith turned to him desperately. We must retreat. The Emperor's world still stands, we can regroup. No, Varkan interrupted. There is nowhere left to run. This is not war, Sithra. This is revelation. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then what do we do? The question lingered between them, heavy and unanswered. At that moment, a transmission from the homeworld arrived. The Emperor's image appeared in flickering light, his expression carved from stone. High Admiral Varkan, you are ordered to counterattack immediately. Erase these heretics or face extinction yourself. Varkan stared at the projection for a long moment. Extinction, he repeated softly. Perhaps we already face it. The Emperor's voice thundered. You will obey. But the words dissolved into static as the signal collapsed, cut clean by a pinpoint strike from orbit. For the briefest instant, the homeworld's atmosphere burned. Then it was gone. Sithra fell to her knees, eyes wide. The Emperor. Varkan turned from the viewport. Dead. Along with the illusion that we were eternal. He sank back into his throne, his armor dim under the cold light of dying systems. Around him, the bridge crew stared in disbelief at their fading screens. Through the static, a voice emerged, human, calm, and final. High Admiral Varkan, your empire is finished. Your people need not follow it into the void. Surrender, and we will rebuild what remains. Varkan's claws flexed against the armrest. You offer mercy after slaughter. The voice didn't waver. Mercy isn't weakness. It's control. He sat in silence, considering the impossible choice, vengeance or survival, pride or truth. He thought of his soldiers, his species, the billions who had worshipped power, as if it were destiny. Sithra looked up, her eyes pleading. Admiral, what do we do now? Varkan exhaled slowly. We learn. He signaled the transmission. To the Terran command, he said, voice steady but stripped of grandeur, the Zeroth Dominion surrenders. There was a pause, then Ward's quiet response, acknowledged. No celebration followed, no fanfare or triumph. Just the soft hum of systems powering down as the great fleet went still. Varkan looked once more into the void, where the Leviathan loomed like a shadow of judgment. He thought of what it meant to be mortal, to bleed, to fear, to change, and for the first time in his existence, he felt something resembling peace. The bridge lights dimmed as the Dominion's crest flickered and died. The age of gods was over, and somewhere beyond the silence, humanity prepared for what came next. The war ended without ceremony. There were no parades, no victory anthems echoing across the stars, only silence, vast and heavy. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as the human fleets withdrew from their battle lines, leaving behind the drifting carcasses of the once mighty Zeroth Dominion. Where the gods had ruled, there was only ruin and a cold new order taking shape in their absence. High Admiral Varkan stood beneath an alien sky that was no longer his. The Dominion's capital world, scorched but surviving, had become a place of uneasy restoration. Human transports glided overhead, efficient, wordless, unarmed yet unstoppable. The banners of the Dominion had been lowered, replaced not by human insignias, but by a single emblem of white and silver, the Terran Accord. He had not been executed, though part of him believed he deserved to be. Instead, he had been given a title, Liaison Mediator, a word that meant both servant and bridge. He wore it like a wound. From the city's shattered spires, he watched as human engineers rebuilt what they had destroyed. They moved with quiet precision, repairing, cataloging, stabilizing. There was no gloating, no cruelty. That frightened him more than vengeance ever could. Their restraint was unnatural. It was power without appetite. Admiral Varkan, came a familiar voice. Captain Elias Ward approached, his uniform crisp, his demeanor unchanged from that first moment aboard the Leviathan. Time hadn't softened him. If anything, he seemed carved from the same calm steel that had commanded a war without passion. His eyes, though, carried weight, human haunted. Captain, Varkan greeted, his tone neither bitter nor reverent. I assume you've come to ensure I'm behaving. Ward's faint smile was almost kind. You've given us no reason to doubt you. No reason yet, Varkan said softly, turning his gaze back to the horizon. I sometimes wonder if you fear what you created. You've become gods in all but name. Ward's answer was quiet but certain. That's exactly why we don't use the word. Varkan studied him. Do you believe this peace will last? Fear is a fragile leash. Ward looked skyward where orbital rings encircled the planet like halos of steel. It won't, but it will hold long enough for something better to begin. Fear is the first lesson. Understanding must be the second. Varkan laughed under his breath. You sound like a philosopher, not a soldier. Only soldiers who survive long enough earn the right to become philosophers, Ward replied. They stood together in silence. Around them, alien children watched the humans curiously, no longer running, no longer screaming. The universe was healing, though unevenly. Varkan finally said, You could have erased us. Why didn't you? Ward's eyes lingered on the horizon. Because extinction is easy. We've done it before to ourselves. Survival requires discipline. That's harder. The words settled between them, heavy with truth. Later, as dusk painted the ruined city in shades of copper and ash, Varkan entered the chamber assigned to him, a temporary command center repurposed from what had once been his war hall. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing reconstruction data, refugee movements, and the shifting borders of what remained of the Dominion. A single message awaited him, marked with Earth's seal. It was from the Terran Council, addressed personally. You are invited to participate in the Accord Summit. Your insights into Dominion governance are of strategic value. He read it twice, then closed the transmission. Strategic value, he murmured. Even mercy is a weapon to you, isn't it, Captain? The door opened behind him. Ward entered without ceremony. I thought you might refuse the invitation. I considered it, Varkan admitted. But refusal would mean irrelevance. I find I'm not ready to be forgotten. Ward regarded him quietly. Neither are we. That's what keeps us dangerous. For a long time, neither spoke. The sound of distant construction filtered through the walls, the rebuilding of a world that no longer belonged to either of them. Do you regret it? Varkan asked suddenly. All this. The killing, the silence, the aftermath. Ward met his gaze. Regret isn't the right word. We don't regret what had to be done. We regret that it had to be us who did it. Varkan turned that over in his mind. And when someone does to you what you did to us. Ward's eyes darkened. Then I hope they've learned mercy as we did. Outside, thunder rolled across the alien plains, though the sky was clear. It was not weather but the sound of orbital forges activating, the hum of human expansion continuing, unstoppable, precise. Tell me something, Captain, Varkan said quietly. What do humans dream of now that there's no one left to fear them? Ward's expression didn't change. We dream of being worthy of what we've become. The simplicity of the answer unsettled him. The gods he had once served demanded worship, obedience, sacrifice. The humans demanded nothing, yet their influence was absolute. They had won the galaxy not through domination, but through inevitability. Varkan turned back to the window. You've replaced faith with reason, emotion with purpose. But if you strip away fear, guilt, and pride, what's left of a soul? Ward regarded him for a long moment. Maybe that's what we're trying to find out. He left without another word. Night descended, thick and metallic, reflecting the hum of orbiting vessels. Varkan remained alone, watching the city's lights flicker back to life, one by one. The Dominion's crests still adorn a few surviving towers, symbols of a past no one dared erase completely. They stood now as relics, reminders of how quickly divinity could turn to dust. He activated his recorder and began to speak, his voice steady but distant. To the survivors of Zeroth, we live in the age after gods. Our conquerors are not divine, yet they wield creation and destruction as easily as breath. They rebuild our cities not out of compassion but comprehension. I have seen the faces of men who command the stars, and I tell you this, there are no gods among them, only mirrors. He stopped recording and stared at the blinking light. Then he deactivated it and walked to the balcony overlooking the rebuilt square. Children's laughter echoed faintly below, a fragile sound in a scarred world. He found it strangely comforting. Above, Earth's fleets shimmered like constellations, silent, vigilant, waiting. Humanity had claimed no thrones, only responsibility. But power, he knew, had a gravity all its own. Captain Ward stood on the Leviathan's bridge once more, watching the same stars. The galaxy lay open before him, endless and uncertain. Course set, his officer asked. Beyond the rim, Ward replied. There are other empires out there, still dreaming they're untouchable. And if they attack? Ward's gaze hardened, but his voice stayed calm. Then we remind them what happens when gods meet men. The ship's engines roared to life, the hum of its power resonating through the void like a heartbeat. As the Leviathan slipped into the dark, Ward allowed himself a single thought, a silent hope that the universe would never again need to learn what humanity was capable of. On the world below, Varken raised his eyes toward that same departing light and whispered into the wind, "You have shown us the truth. Now may the galaxy never make you prove it again." The Leviathan vanished into the stars, leaving only silence in its wake, a silence vast enough to hold both fear and faith, and the fragile hope that,